Have you ever wondered how a bowl of cornflakes became a moral obligation, or why skipping breakfast feels like breaking a rule? This is the story of how cereal companies, wellness cults, and a PR mastermind turned a simple meal into a moral mandate. Welcome to Lies We Bought.
Because they sold it, we bought it, and now we're unpacking it.
Let's make this personal for a second. What's your breakfast story? Were you a cereal kid? Did Tony the Tiger hype you up before school? Or maybe you were Team Oatmeal sitting there wishing you had the fun box. Maybe you were one of the brave souls who skipped breakfast and spent the morning thinking you were somehow doing life wrong. You've heard it a million times. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but what if I told you that line wasn't born in a lab or even a nutritionist's office? It was born in a marketing meeting. Yeah, the same people that brought you the sugar-laden cereals also convinced you that skipping breakfast was practically a sin against productivity. Let's rewind to where it started. The late 1800s, corsets, cholera, and a national obsession with digestion. America was tight laced and constipated. Regularity was the wellness trend of the day. Think cold plunges and gut health TikToks, but with enemas. And leading that charge, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. Yep, that Kellogg. He wasn't just a cereal guy, he was a surgeon, a devout Seventh day Adventist, and one of the original wellness influencers. But instead of fit tea and affiliate codes, he was pushing hydrotherapy, yogurt enemas, and lectures about the dangers of lust. His Battle Creek Sanitarium became ground zero for America's first wellness boom. It wasn't just a hospital, it was a pilgrimage site for the rich, the powerful, and the extremely constipated. Picture this: white linen uniforms, brass bed frames, sunlight pouring through the tall arched windows, and the faint sound of somebody chewing 30 times per bite because Dr. Kellogg said that's what God wanted. It was wellness as worship. And the Kellogg's weren't alone. Across the country, reformers preached clean eating as a path to purity. Reverend Sylvester Graham, yeah, the graham cracker guy, was selling bland bread as a weapon against lust. Early vegetarians were claiming moral superiority with every spoonful of oatmeal. America was waist deep in detox and guilt, and breakfast was about to become the next frontier of salvation. What's funny is we think we invented wellness culture, but the 1890s already had the blueprint: fear, faith, and marketing dressed as medicine. Now, Kellogg's believed bland food could keep your urges under control, not metaphorically, literally. Spicy foods, he said, could lead to sinful thoughts. And that's how cornflakes were born. John and his brother, Will Keith Kellogg, were cooking wheat porridge for patients when they accidentally left it out overnight. By morning, it had gone stale, and instead of tossing it out, they ran it through rollers and it flaked. They toasted them and then surged them. A miracle was born. Side note, by about 1898, they switched to corn, and cornflakes, as we know today, were created. John wanted the flakes to cleanse the soul, but Will wanted to add sugar and sell them to the masses. When John refused, Will started the Kellogg Company in 1906. That was the moment breakfast stopped being moral and started being marketable. Once the cereal hit the shelves, the Kellogg's weren't just selling food, they were selling a lifestyle. Will wasn't the only one cashing in. Around the same time, C.W. Post, a former Battle Creek patient, launched Post Toasties. His slogan, "The cereal that saves time." He sold convenience as virtue, and it worked. Early print ads promised energy, vitality, and cheerful mornings, all without ever mentioning sugar. One 1910s Kellogg's ad called cornflakes the sunny start for a busy people. Another warned mothers that skipping breakfast could make their children nervous and dull in school, and no mother wanted that. The message was clear: breakfast wasn't just about health, it was about morality. By the 1920s, Kellogg's had found their perfect audience: women. Newspapers and magazines showed bright eyed moms serving cereal to smiling families under taglines like, "A well fed family is the well led family." It was emotional blackmail wrapped in wholesome typography. And it worked. But there was a new player to enter the game, and he wasn't just selling cereal, he was about to change the marketing forever. Meet Edward Bernays. He was the nephew of Sigmund Freud and would later be called the father of public relations. Bernays understood something revolutionary. People didn't buy products, they bought meaning. In the 1920s, the Beechnut Packing Company hired him to sell bacon. But Bernays didn't take out ads. Instead, he went to the doctors. He asked them one simple question: is a hearty breakfast better for your health than a light one? Most said yes. He spun that into a press release claiming doctors recommend bacon and eggs for breakfast. And just like that, a new American tradition was born, backed by science and sizzling fat. He didn't sell bacon, he sold certainty, he sold permission. Bernays had discovered the most powerful marketing tool of all: authority. A few years later, he used the same strategy to convince women to smoke cigarettes in public. He called it Torches of Freedom. He hired debutantes to march in New York City Easter Parade, cigarettes in hand, and tipped the press off in advance. The next day, headlines read, "Women Light Torches of Freedom." This wasn't a protest, it was a PR stunt. He reframed smoking as empowerment, and the sales skyrocketed. Bernays proved that if you can attach a product to a social ideal, people will buy it with conviction. After that, advertising would never be the same. He even advised the US government on propaganda during World War I. When the war ended, those same tactics came home to the breakfast tables, to the medicine cabinets, to the living rooms across America. By the 1940s, authority had become the aesthetic, the lab coat, the clipboard, the phrase, 4 out of 5 doctors recommend. It didn't matter if the study was real, it looked official. It was official. This was the era of the Good Housekeeping seal of approval, of doctor's orders, and clinically proven. Bernays had planted the seed, and mid century advertising watered it. Authority became the language of truth, and every expert says ad that followed, from toothpaste to cereal, was just another chapter in his playbook. Okay, back to breakfast. What Bernays really did was flip the switch on how Americans decided what was true. Before him, we trusted people we knew. After him, we trusted people who sounded like they knew. Psychologists now call it authority bias. Our tendencies to believe anyone in a lab coat, even if they're just reading from a script. Bernays turned that instinct into an industry. By the 1930s, companies were hiring consulting experts who didn't exist. Entire marketing agencies were building fake research bureaus to publish scientific reports that conveniently backed their products. One cereal company even claimed its flakes could cleanse the blood. Another promised it improved moral tone in children. None of it had proof, but it had polish. This is how trust became a marketing tool, not earned, manufactured. By the 1950s, breakfast is the most important meal of the day had gone national. Cereal companies plastered it everywhere: ads, pamphlets, even school programs. They weren't selling food anymore, they were selling identity. The good American family ate breakfast together. The responsible mom served cereal. The successful dad read the paper with his orange juice. And the kids? Tony the Tiger told us it was great. The Trix Rabbit begged for a bite. Captain Crunch destroyed the roof of your mouth, and you still managed to feel patriotic. Cereal became wholesome rebellion. Sugar disguised as virtue. And repetition did the rest. Psychologists call it the illusionary truth effect. Say something enough times, and it becomes fact. That's the real genius of marketing. It doesn't just sell you something, it sells you back to yourself. By the 1960s and 70s, cereal just wasn't food, it was culture. Saturday mornings were sponsored by sugar. Cartoons were basically 30 minutes of commercials with plot lines. The Flintstones pitched Fruity Pebbles. Scooby Doo ate cereal between mysteries. Even Barbie had her own cereal. And the jingles? Unforgettable. They're magically delicious. Silly Rabbit, tricks are for kids. They weren't just catchy, they were programming. Decades later, neuroscientists confirmed what marketers already knew. Pairing a tune with repetition wires belief. It's called the earworm effect. Say it with melody, and it sticks like nostalgia's favorite song. But here's the twist: science never actually backed the myth. For decades, breakfast is the most important meal of the day was repeated so often it sounded like data. But the evidence? Barely there. In 2019, a British medical journal meta analysis, which is basically the study of studies, reviewed 13 randomized controlled trials. This flipped the narrative. There was no consistent link between eating breakfast and better weight management. In fact, people who skipped breakfast ate about 260 fewer calories per day on average. It wasn't a fluke. The research spanned the US, Japan, the UK, and Australia. And whether participants ate eggs or cereal or a balanced meal, it didn't matter. What mattered was the body's own rhythm or your circadian biology. Some people are naturally hungry in the mornings, others aren't. Your metabolism doesn't crash if you skip a meal, it adapts. That's called metabolic flexibility. Your body doesn't care what the clock says, it cares what it needs. In 2014, researchers at the University of Bath compared breakfast eaters and skippers over 6 weeks. The result? Nearly identical calorie burn. No magic metabolism boost, just different patterns. And yet, scroll through any social media today and you'll see never skip breakfast. Because that line wasn't designed to describe biology, it was designed to sell behavior. There's even a name for the gap between science and belief: the breakfast bias. Researchers use this to describe how marketing shaped policy, how school meal programs, doctor pamphlets, and government guidelines all cited the same handful of, get this, serial funded studies. Yeah, I'll say that again. Serial funded studies. The same people that are selling you the cereal are funding the studies. A 2013 Nutrition Journal study found that research funded by cereal companies was up to 8 times more likely to report breakfast benefits than independent studies. That's not coincidence, my friend. That is sponsorship bias. So when you see science shows breakfast improves focus, maybe ask yourself, who paid for their microscope? Because at the end of the day, it wasn't science that made breakfast sacred. It was the storytelling, the illusion of expertise, the comfort of certainty, and the marketing genius that made the bowl of sugar feel like salvation. Fast forward to now. Breakfast marketing didn't die. It just changed fonts. In early 2024, Kellogg CEO Gary Pilnick went on national television and suggested that struggling families should eat cereal for dinner.
The cereal category has always been quite affordable, and it tends to be a great destination when consumers are under pressure. So some of the things that we're doing is first messaging. We got to reach the consumer where they are. So we're advertising about cereal for dinner. If you think about the cost of cereal for a family versus what they might otherwise do, that's going to be much more affordable.
While it's true you can eat breakfast for dinner, the timing was not ideal and sounded very tone deaf. Inflation was high, groceries were expensive, and people were already stretching every dollar just to get real food on the table. TikTok, of course, responded the only way that TikTok knows how, with fire. Comments like, "Let them eat loops," flooded in. And honestly, the line, cereal for dinner, might be the perfect modern symbol of the century-old myth: the idea of what is convenient must be virtuous, because the playbook hasn't changed. A fitness influencer with 2 million followers went viral for her pro-metabolic breakfast bowl, a $12 box of cereal with collagen peptides sold as gut-friendly. Same old playbook. The faces have changed, but the script is the same: Today, instead of doctors in white coats, we have influencers in matching sets. What I eat in a day videos rack up millions of views. The camera pans across a spotless kitchen, perfect lighting, pastel bowls. The voiceover promises balance, energy, healing. It's not so different from a 1950s ad, just less typography and more filters. The same emotional levers are being pulled: guilt, aspiration, belonging. You're not buying a product, you're buying a lifestyle you can photograph. And here's the kicker: many of those creators aren't lying, they genuinely believe what they're selling. And that is what makes it so effective. When belief becomes branding, persuasion doesn't need a villain, it just needs a ring light. So when I say the playbook hasn't changed, that's what I mean. Bernays sold authority, influencers sell authenticity. Different tools, same psychology. Even nostalgia's been rebranded. The breakfast aisle is still a masterclass in manipulation. Comfort food that's been photoshopped. A bowl full of childhood memories that somehow costs $9.99 and has 18 grams of protein. Sometimes I wonder if Bernays would be proud or horrified. Probably both. So, what do we do with all of this? Maybe nothing revolutionary, maybe just eat when you're hungry. That's it. Eat when you're hungry. Look, I'm not a doctor. I don't have a nutrition degree. I'm just someone who has spent years watching how marketing rewires what we think we need. So take this episode as perspective, not prescription. But maybe next time you see a health claim, ask who's funding it. You know yourself better than any cereal box or podcast host. If you want to wake up starving, eat breakfast. If you don't, skip it. If you want to slam an energy drink and go feral by noon, that's all you. Find what works for your body, your schedule, and your sanity. I'll be honest, I still grab a box of cereal every now and then. It tastes like Saturday mornings and cartoons. Growing up, I always wanted the retina-scarring neon cereals. You know, the one that turns the milk blue and came with a toy in every box? But we couldn't afford those. I'd stare at the Fruit Loop box, dreaming of the Dakota ring, and we would leave with plain Chex or Kix instead. Even now, when I walk down the cereal aisle, I feel that spark of nostalgia, that pull between what I wanted and what I had. And that's the magic of marketing. It doesn't just sell you your appetite, it sells you your memories. Breakfast isn't sacred, it's just a meal that got really, really good PR. Because when a multimillionaire CEO tells working families to eat cereal for dinner, maybe it's time we stop swallowing what we've been spoon-fed. We've been sold more than cereal. We've been sold stories that shape how we see ourselves. From a bowl of flakes to a life of shoulds, marketing doesn't just fill our plates, it fills our minds with myths. So, here's the challenge. Question the script. Choose what serves you, not the brands, not the ads, but your own truth. Let's start rewriting those stories, one breakfast at a time. Another lie bought and sold, and maybe one you can retire. Next time, we're tackling the biggest thirst trap in wellness: 8 glasses a day.